Union Arena, best rare battles decks. We'll be going over the Black Clover, Bleach, and SAO decks for rare battles. Of course, JJK rare battle will be coming up. That will only happen with the release of Volume 2. So what is the Union Arena rare battle? It is a special tournament design that goes from a certain date to a certain date, and overall what you'll want to be winning are the rare prize cards that are only available during this time. So the biggest rare battle rule is that you can only play decks using cards from the same IP. So if you're playing the strongest deck, you'll likely be playing against the same color over and over again. So with that in mind, I recommend picking a strong, consistent deck that has a good matchup versus other decks from the same IP. But of course, I like to put a disclaimer. This is a lot of my personal opinion just due to the overall lack of metagame data because we haven't had a rare battle event for these IPs so far. So overall, just don't hate me if your favorite deck isn't here. I don't know how your deck will perform against decks from the same IP. Sword Art Online. So in my opinion, I think the best deck of Sword Art Online is definitely the blue switch deck that you can see here, but specifically for the metagame of a rare battle, it was this deck that was piloted by Ming in the Draw 3 SAO case tournament. So we'll go over why I think this deck is so powerful, especially in a rare battle metagame. But first, we'll go over how this deck performs. So overall, the idea is to use your Kiritos to multi-attack, whether that is double attacking by himself with the 4-cost Kirito, or using the 5-cost Kirito to bring up a character at the end of his attack, like an Asuna, who can also gain Impact 1 to really punish your player for having a slow start. But what is very interesting about Ming's particular deck is that he does not play any AP restand cards like the Asuna Sandwich, and he doesn't play this 3-cost Yui. I would assume the main idea is really to go full pedal to the metal and really slam dunk on his opponent while they're trying to set up. So you don't want to be drawing AP restand cards like the Asuna Sandwich that will effectively slow down your deck's approach to really pushing the tempo to gain an advantage early on. In the same way, he is playing 4 of the 2-cost Kiritos, which gain 1 energy when active, and also 4 of the 5-cost Kiritos to really push on your opponent when he's a bit behind to really gain the advantage. Next is green SAO deck piloted by Urameshi in the same tournament. So be going the basic of the deck. So you'll usually be playing your 6-cost Sinon to snipe an opposing character, and also you would like to use your 7-cost Kirito that has the ability that if one of your other character wins a battle, this character gains damage too. So you want to play it in tandem with the Sinon so that the Kirito can gain Impact 1 and damage 2, and also the Kirito synergizes well with the Sinon because it can give Sinon plus 1000 attack so that the Sinon can snipe a 5000 character on your opponent's field. What's notable about this deck is that in the 0-cost characters, we are also playing a Yuki. This helps us increase consistency of the deck because we'll be going through more of our cards and getting to our more impactful raid cards. Something of note also is that he is playing 2 Photon Swords. So this is a card that allows you to pump up one of your Kiritos so that it is at minimum 4000 BP, and most importantly to give it impact plus 1. So this is not just impact 1 because you can use it to pump up your raid Kirito so that your raid Kirito can have damage 2 and impact 2, which effectively forces your opponent to take 2 damage no matter what. Cards that this deck is not playing is the 4-cost Kirito, mostly because I would assume that this is for 90% of the time just the 4000 vanilla, and even the when attacking ability is not that strong because we are most likely the control deck and will always be a bit of tempo behind, so drawing a card is not that important. And this deck is not playing the 3-cost Buggy, mostly just because I think it's of personal preference because he feels like it's not needed to push the tempo to get out our raids faster. The next deck is a personal preference of mine. I really think that the Mother Rosario deck does have a chance in a rare battle environment, mostly because the 3-cost Asuna is a very strong card, even though it doesn't appear to be at 4 Yukis or Mother Rosarios plus 500 BP during your turn. And most importantly, gains when you have 6 or more of those cards impact 1. So this is a sneaky little card that your opponent might forget, and thus you can push through that extra damage even if his board is full. What is also important is the 4-cost 2 action point Yuki has a very particular ability because it sidelines at the start of your turn, so your opponent may not know how to play around this card and may waste cards to sideline it on their turn, which can definitely play into your favor. So overall, the strong point of this deck is that it plays a lot of unexpected cards that your opponent might not know how to play around just because they don't have the experience, and they can help you win some games, especially if you're looking for an inexpensive deck to bring to these rare battles. The other decks that are in this IP we'll go over briefly. So for the Integrity or Goddess Yellow deck, I just feel like it's too slow and fragile for this metagame, mostly because you'll be playing a lot against the blue switch decks, which are very fast, and thus all of your cards that have Nullify Impact are not that good versus that deck because their only impact card is one of the Asunas. So overall, I just don't think that this deck really fits into the metagame. And the same idea, the ALO blue deck is just too inconsistent to have a real impact in this metagame. Bleach. So I really think that the best deck for the Bleach metagame is this purple Bleach deck that runs Squad 0 cards. So this deck was piloted by Anto in the Haven Summer Showdown, and it got 4th place. So we'll be going over what I think makes this deck really good. This is my personal deck list for the same purple Bleach deck. There are some minor differences regarding to the ratios, but we're playing the same cards. So overall, I actually think the strongest card in the game, not just in the Bleach metagame, is the Royal Palace. Even though it was released in set 1, it has a very strong effect. So it says play this site set to active onto your field, activate main, switch to resting, look at the top card of your deck. If that card has Squad 0 affinity, you may reveal it and add it to your hand. Otherwise, place it on the top of your deck or into the sideline. So if you're looking at Anto's deck, he plays 23 Squad 0 cards, so that is effectively a bit below half of your deck, so you have about 50% chance to get an extra draw during your turn at no cost without paying an AP. But even then, if you don't hit a Squad 0 card, you will most likely be placing that card into the sideline if it is not a special card or a raid card, and thus you'll be fueling your 5-cost Ichigo, which if you remember really needs cards in the sideline to use its ability to be able to sideline a character. So you'll be using the cards in your sideline to effectively be able to sideline your opposing cards. So if you see here, the effect of the Royal Palace really fuels both parts of the synergies of the deck, whether it's the Ichigos or drawing Squad 0 cards to fuel your other removal cards. Next up, we'll be going over the Squad 0 cards. So we have our 4-cost Shutara and the special of the deck. So both of these cards require you that you remove Squad 0 cards from your hand to be able to sideline opposing characters of increasing BP. So not only is the Shutara strong by herself, but the special allows you to draw cards according to the amount of Squad 0 cards that you sideline. So this is especially important because it allows you to remove cards that you don't really want, like 0 or 1-cost cards, to be able to search or dig for your big raid cards like the 5-cost Ichigo, which can help accelerate your game plan and really be able to sideline characters that you want to get out of the game. Another interesting card is the 4-cost Ichibe that says when played, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, place them on the top of your deck in any order. So the when played effect is the most important because if you can use it and you already have 2 or maybe 1 or the Royal Palace, you can effectively stack your deck in a way that you will always draw a card in your favor, and maybe 2 if you have 2 Royal Palaces. So this is a very strong combo that you can have in the late game to be able to effectively draw more cards. We have the 4-cost Ichigo, which at full power is probably the strongest non-raid character in the game because at 4000 BP, he has Nullify Impact, Damage 2, and Impact 1. So next up, I like to go over the green Toshiro / Kenpachi deck. So I think this is a very strong deck in the metagame because it plays the 4-cost Kenpachi, so the rain and non-rain one. And these cards are mostly important because they have the ability to not be affected by BP reducing abilities. So if you look at the metagame, we'll be mostly playing against purple Bleach decks, and there are different versions of them, but they can play either the 5-cost Ichigo or the 5-cost Byakuya, and both these cards reduce your BP. If you have any of these Kenpachis on the field, those cards are effectively useless and effectively countered by the deck that you are playing. However, if your opponent is playing the Squad 0 cards like the Shutara or the special, keep in mind that they do not reduce BP. Their effects straight up sideline your character depending on how much BP they have. So the Kenpachi's ability to not be affected by BP reducing abilities is not useful. But keep in mind, the 4-cost Kenpachi, when raided, doesn't care depending on how it is sidelined, so you can always use its effect no matter what the condition is. Next, we'll go over the Toshiro. This is a very strong card because it rests your opponent's character until the end of their next attack phase. So I'd like to note that in this particular metagame, you may be playing against the blue Ichigo deck, which overall goal is to play a rated Ichigo and power up for double attacks and drawing cards. But if they just play one strong card and you can use your Toshiro to effectively freeze it, you basically counter their entire strategy. So this deck list just came out. It won one of the recent rare battles. Scott Bowen used this deck, the blue Ichigo deck featuring Renji, to win. I'm not too familiar with this deck list or how it plays, but it is definitely an interesting deck list to show off. If you want a more quote-unquote proven deck list, I think you can definitely give this deck a try. So not only does it play the blue Ichigo, you're playing also the 3-cost 2-action point Renji, mostly I think to really surprise your opponent because it is a well-statted card for only 3 cost. And the 2 energy Renji definitely can surprise your opponent because it can give impact +1 to a 2-action point card to really push for the win. So for the other decks in the blue IP, blue Mayuri, I'm not really sure how competitive this deck is, but if you want to give it a try, definitely go for it. And for the yellow Stern Riders and Bamieta decks, they're definitely good decks. They can definitely win. It's just that they're not as consistent as the other decks. Black Clover. I really think this is the best deck for this metagame, the Red Asta deck, but specifically with the Noels. So what's really strong about Noel is that if you play an event during your turn, this character gains 1000 BP and impact 1 until the end of the turn. So what is very strong about this ability is that it puts your character at 5000 BP. So the scenario where this works the best is if you're playing against a tall green deck that has a Mario Leona on the field with 5000 BP. So in any other build of Red Asta, you wouldn't be able to get over this card, but because you are playing the Noel, you can go over the Mario Leona and deal that damage with impact 1 to win the game. Another card that works very well in this metagame is the Sea Dragon's Lair. So this allows you to protect one of your characters from basically all abilities. So this card is very good to counter the most common removal in the Red Asta deck, which is the 5-cost Asta that can sideline your character during their turn. Another build that would be effective in this metagame is the Red Event build that uses the Noels and Mimosas to win the game. So just by their own, these two cards are very synergistic with each other by allowing you to play more event cards and use those event cards in your sideline to power up your Noel. So overall, these two cards are very strong on their own, but in this specific metagame, they're pretty good against cards like the 4-cost Asta because they don't depend on their abilities past the turn that they are played. So for example, the Mimosa only has a when played ability. Even if your opponent uses the 4-cost Asta to remove its abilities, it doesn't do anything because the Mimosa is effectively a vanilla past the first turn. The Noel does have an ability that can be used during your turn after you've played it, but for the most part, it's not that damaging to have a Asta negate her abilities. Other cards in the deck that I feel that are good are the events that allow you to increase the consistency of your deck. So the All-Knowing Priestess, after having played it for a while, is not that much of a searcher because it allows you to only look at the top 2 cards of your deck, but it's more of a blank card that allows you to play something for free and fill your sideline with event cards. So this really increases the consistency of your deck because if you play 4 of these, you're effectively playing a 46 card deck because you don't lose any AP while playing these cards if you play it properly. Next is the Mimosa, that's a 3-cost that can look for pretty much any red event card, even a special. And this really helps you search for those cards to get past annoying cards on your opponent's field. Another deck that I feel like would be good in the metagame is the tall green deck, but specifically this build of the deck, and I'll be going over why. So I'll be looking over why I think this build is a bit different, mostly because we have 2 options for color triggers, the 3-cost Julius or the 5-cost Yami. So I think that after playing for a while, I think the 3-cost Julius is just a lot better because the 5-cost Yami is for the most part a vanilla, but the 3-cost Julia is more flexible because it allows you to add any card that you search for on the top 3 cards of your deck, which can either be an AP restand card, a special card, or any other follow-up card that you really need to fit into your curve. So that's why I think the 3-cost Julius is just overall on average much better than the 5-cost Yami, even though Yami's ceiling could be a bit higher in the right circumstances. So in this particular build, I would play it very aggressively. So the main focus of this deck is to really to get a 0-cost Nero onto the field and then to use her ability to rest her, which will get you to 2 energy, which will allow you to play the 2-cost Yami. So even while the Yami is rested, you will be at 3 energy, and this unlocks all your other 3-cost cards, like the 3-cost Mario Leona or the 3-cost Julius that we just talked about. This is what will allow you to ramp up to what I think is the strongest point of the deck. So the main point of this particular build is to rush out 4-cost non-raid cards. So you will be playing 12 of them. So the major combo is playing the 4-cost Charlotte that says when you have a Yami, it goes up to 4000 BP. And this increase in BP allows you to play the 4-cost 2-action point Yami for only 1 action point. So the Yami during your turn gains 1000 BP going up to 5000 and also has damage too. So on its own, it is pretty much one of the strongest non-raid characters by having 5000 BP and damage 2 on your turn. Another non-raid character, the 4-cost Fuego Leon, is very important, especially in the late game, because if you're able to buffer to 5000 BP, she gains impact 1, which can allow you to deal that extra damage for a game. So overall, you want to be playing a lot of non-raid threats early onto your board to be able to force your opponent into an awkward situation. So we will still be playing the 7-cost Mario Leona, but she's effectively more of a backup card to push through damage, just using her impact 1 or damage 2. She's not the main focus of the deck, but keep in mind, when you have a 4-cost Charlotte in the front line, you can always step it back to give you enough energy to play the 7-cost card to really push for the late game damage. So for the other decks in this IP, I just think that the Purple Bulls or Triad deck is just too fragile to compete with the decks that I've shown, mostly because they require specific pieces to be put in place to be effective. For the 3 energy green deck, I just think it's a bit too inconsistent overall, and it has a very low ceiling. If your opponent can survive the first few hits, you will not have enough gas to get over the threats that they will be playing in subsequent turns. Alright, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more videos.